Yes, my name is John G. Sutton, and this is Tales from the Jails. Right, today we're going to talk about a subject matter that was, at the time, extremely concerning to the population and certainly to the government. We're talking about the National Front, yeah, which was a pseudo political party that was preaching white power and virtually, basically, extremely racist policies. And I really got involved in this at the behest of a Labour cabinet minister called Eric Heffer, who was the Member of Parliament for Liverpool, Walton, I believe it was, that area. And he contacted me by telephone and asked me to do an investigation and a report to him on the National Front movement operating within Strangeways. At the time, I was known for my out, outspoken uh, attacks on the Prison Officers Association because they were a tool of management containing all ranks from the basic grade officers, newly recruited, right up to the number one chief officer. So there was no representation, and you can't have the working man without representation. My belief. Anyway, Eric Effer called me and asked me to do an investigation to him privately, clandestinely, into the National Front and its operation within Strangeways because he'd had complaints from constituents that they had been abused by the National Front. And so, at Strangeways, there was a movement. There was a chapter or a group of people who were in the National Front, and in fact, the leader of the North West National Front, entirely the whole lot for the North West, was a principal officer at Strangeways Prison, and he was also the chairman of the Prison Officers Association. Seriously. Uh, I'll tell you his name actually. Why not? I mean, it's out there. His name was Brian Baldwin. Yeah? Brian Baldwin. So I expressed some interest to Brian Baldwin in the National Front, saying, it's obviously, a movement I'd like to look at. And believing that I was really interested, he invited me to join him and come to a meeting of the National Front. And there were a number of officers there that were in the National Front. They used to wear a little badge. It was like a furled flag, a little badge on their uniform. And one of the staff had this on, and I saw him come to him while I was with him one day, and he said, "What's that badge about?" And he said, "It's the National Front, NFI, not fucking interested." Piss off. Seriously, that's what he said to this inmate, innocuously asking. They were quite aggressive, some of the staff there. Anyway, came the evening, I'm going to go to a meeting of the National Front, not just the staff at the prison. And Brian Baldwin invited me to go in his car, mistakenly believing that I was a supporter of this madness. And I went along, and it was at a hall in Manchester, a big old mansion, medieval mansion. It was some big place, and so we went in there, and I sat next to Brian Baldwin, and he says, "You're going to be highly delighted with the speech this evening." He says, "Wait till you see who's speaking." So there was about, I would say, 200 people in this hall, and we were right at the front because Brian was organising this, And Brian got up on stage, said, "I'm welcome to the meeting of the National Front, all the rest of the Northwest Committee, and we're pleased to introduce our guest speaker from America, Mr. David Jukes, the Grand Wizard of the Ku Klux Klan. I mean, this is in Manchester. I'd seen it in the papers. The government knew that he was in Britain, but they didn't know where he was. Now we knew where he was. He was on stage, and he was staying at the home of Brian Baldwin, believe it or not. A Home Office property. That's where David Dukes was. And he stood up on the platform, David Dukes, and he started to spout the most ridiculous kind of utter nonsense about how mankind is being split into two parts and you can recognise the leaders, they're the white people. And then he's seriously jumping up and down, throwing his fist in the air, white power, white, and all these maniacs around me jumping up shouting white power, white power. Yeah, white power. You should have seen the state of them. Eh? What a bunch of half-wits. Anyway, all this comes to an end, you know, with David Dukes uttering absolute horrific racist nonsense. And I'm making mental notes, of course. And subsequently I wrote it up and sent it to Eric Heffer, told him the names of the staff that were involved in the National Front at Strangeways and about attending this meeting with David Dukes of the Ku Klux Klan, you know, and Eric Heffer was absolutely horrified by this. He asked me to submit my writings to, was it the Jewish Gazette, because the Jewish Gazette was published at a place called Presswich, which is quite close to Strangeways, which I sent them that. Said, you know, for your information. I believe that they used it in some articles, you know, about Dukes and all that, because it was just horrendous. I mean, and some of the books that they were putting out as propaganda for the National Front were basically glorifications of the Nazis. And a lot of the staff kind of glorified this era. Very dangerous people, I thought. And of course, once it came out that I'd done this, you know, the National Front were not this particular white man. I was persona non grata. Hey, but at least I wasn't involved with them, not on any kind of basis other than to explain to Eric Heffer, because he was doing something about it in Parliament. And that was my encounter with the National Front at Strangeways. Very weird people, extremely dangerous as far as, you know, people of colour or black people. They hated them. For what reason? These are human beings. It's what you can't argue with them, though, because they know they're right, don't they? Yeah, they're absolutely barking mad. Oh, and by the way, if you wonder what happened to Brian Baldwin after I put his name forward to a member of the Labour government, because there was a Labour government at one time, and Eric Heffer was a minister with Harold Wilson. But this was after Harold Wilson's time. I'll tell you what happened to Brian Baldwin. The Home Office promoted him from being a principal officer to being a governor in charge of race relations for the Northwest. And the Home Office knew. The Home Office knew that this was a member of the National Front. And imagine putting a member of the National Front in charge of race relations for the prison service. Seriously. It's a strange world.